Ever catch yourself, like, in a full-on mental battle with how things are?
Oh, yeah, like when it's raining and you're thinking, ooh, this rain should just stop. I wanted to go for a walk.
Totally. Or maybe, come on, buddy, you should be way more energetic today. It's like we're constantly arguing with reality.
You hit the nail on the head. And from what we've been diving into, especially in loving what is, that very resistance, that inner struggle against what's actually happening, seems to be at the heart of so much of our suffering.
This deep dive is all about exploring a method for untangling those thoughts, a process called the work, straight from Byron Katie and Steve Mitchell's book.
Think of this as a crash course in a potentially life-changing way to understand and work with that inner world of yours.
So the core idea here is deceptively simple, yet powerful. It's about questioning those thoughts that cause us pain.
And by doing that, we can potentially discover a deep sense of peace and see reality more clearly exactly as it is right now.
Our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the fundamentals of the work and show you how to apply it to any stressful thought or situation that pops up in your life.
We'll be focusing on key tools like the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet and those 4 essential questions that are at the heart of this practice.
The foundation of the work is recognizing when we're in a head-to-head argument with what's actually going on.
Byron Katie states it so clearly. The only time we suffer is when we believe a thought that argues with what is.
And the book offers these incredibly relatable examples, like getting frustrated when someone cuts you off in traffic and thinking people should be more considerate.
Or maybe your computer's acting up and you find yourself saying, this computer should be working faster. It's like we're trying to argue with the laws of physics.
It's futile, right? And it just creates this inner turmoil.
Absolutely. It's that clash between the should in our minds and the is of reality.
And there's this really interesting concept in the book, 3 kinds of business. How does that fit into this whole friction thing?
Right. So Byron Katie divides things into my business, your business, and God's business.
And anything that's not directly within our control or someone else's immediate influence falls into God's business.
Things like the weather, global politics, even other people's feelings, that kind of stuff.
And the book points out that a lot of our stress comes from mentally living in someone else's business or even trying to manage God's business.
Like when you catch yourself thinking, my friend should make better choices, or maybe you're stressing about a huge event that you have absolutely zero power to change.
We step outside our own lane, essentially,
It's like we're trying to run a whole company when our job is just to take care of our own department.
and that leads to feeling disconnected.
Yeah. And it keeps us from fully living our own lives. As Katie puts it, to think that I know what's best for anyone else is to be out of my business. Even in the name of love, it is pure arrogance. And the result is tension, anxiety, and fear.
So it's about focusing on what we can actually influence. Ourselves.
Exactly. Getting back to our own business. And she goes on to say, do I know what's right for me? That is my only business. Let me work with that before I try to solve your problems for you.
That's such a good reminder. Now, the material also talks about becoming aware of our stories.
Mm.
What are those exactly, and how do they contribute to our stress?
Think of stories as these chains of thoughts that we've come to believe are true.
About the past, present, future.
All of it. How things should be, how people should act, you name it. And these stories are running in the background of our minds constantly.
Like a never-ending soap opera.
Kind of. And any little thing can trigger them. A look from a coworker, an email, a news headline, and suddenly, bam, we're caught up in a story.
And those negative emotions, the irritation, anxiety, sadness, they're like a warning sign.
Exactly. They're an internal alarm clock going off, signaling, hey, you're caught up in a story that isn't serving you right now. It's not true for your well-being.
It's a story that's not true. It's such a great way to think about it. So our negative emotions are our inner guide saying, wait a minute, this thought might not be accurate for you right now.
Precisely. And the book emphasizes that by investigating these unhelpful thoughts, we can actually get back in touch with our true nature. You see, believing a story that contradicts our innate state of well-being, which the text suggests is simply happiness, creates suffering.
Okay, so we notice the stressful thought, check if we're meddling in someone else's business, and recognize it might be a story causing us pain. What's next?
That's where inquiry, or the work, comes in.
Right. So what is inquiry and how do we actually do it?
Inquiry is basically putting the work into action. It uses 4 key questions and what we call turnarounds. The goal is to cut through all the mental clutter and find inner peace no matter what's going on around us. And the book stresses this. The answers we need aren't out there somewhere, they're always within us.
Like we have this inner compass, but it's buried under piles of thoughts.
Exactly. And the material suggests that by consistently practicing inquiry, we can gradually become what the book calls a kind, fluid, fearless, amused listener.
Meaning.
Someone who can observe their own thoughts without judgment or getting caught up in them.
And this can lead to a more peaceful life.
It suggests that peace and joy can become our natural state. Maybe so subtly that one day we just realize the struggles that used to consume us don't have that same power over us anymore.
That sounds amazing. So how do we start this inquiry process? The book mentions the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet.
Right, the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet is a tool for getting those painful stories and judgments out of our heads and onto paper. And the instructions are very specific. Be as judgmental and petty as you truly feel. Don't try to be spiritual or nice.
So give that inner critic free rein.
Exactly. The idea is that the more raw and honest we are on the worksheet, the more powerful the insights we'll get through the work.
No sugarcoating allowed. What kind of questions are on this worksheet?
There are 6 main areas to explore. First, you identify the person who's triggering you, the one who's causing anger, confusion, sadness, disappointment, whatever it is. And crucially, the why. Like, I'm frustrated with my colleague because they're always late with their reports.
Okay, naming names and reasons. What's next?
Second, you describe exactly how you want that person to change. What specific actions or behaviors would make you happy? Third, you dish out that unsolicited advice, all those shoulds and shouldn'ts. Fourth, imagine it's your birthday and you can have any wish you want. What do you need this person to think, say, feel, or do for you to feel happy in this situation? The book even says to indulge in the fantasy, let it be wild.
Wow, that's specific. What else?
Fifth, you list all those negative thoughts and judgments you have about them, no holding back. And finally, you articulate what it is about the situation that you absolutely never want to experience again.
It sounds intense. So we've got our judgments all laid out on the table. What then? This is where those 4 key questions come into play, right?
Absolutely. You take each statement, for example, my colleague is always late with their reports, and you apply the 4 questions. The first question is the simplest. Is it true?
Straightforward enough.
And the book emphasizes answering with just yes or no, 1 syllable. Notice if you feel defensive or start justifying your answer. If you find yourself adding because or but, you're probably not quite in the space of pure inquiry yet.
So it's about a gut-level response, no explanations needed. Okay. My colleague is always late with their reports. Is it true? What's the second question?
Question 2 goes deeper. Can you absolutely know that it's true? Here, you're asked to consider whether you can really know another person's inner world with absolute certainty. Can you be 100% sure they'll always be late, or even that they were late every single time? The book even suggests considering if there might be factors you're not aware of. The point is to recognize the limits of our perception and how much we can truly know about what's going on in someone else's mind.
Wow, it really makes you think twice about those judgments. What about question 3?
Question 3 shifts the focus to you. How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? You explore your feelings, any physical sensations, and how you treat the other person and yourself when you're holding on to that belief that your colleague is always late. The book gives these vivid examples, like maybe you feel resentment, frustration, anxiety. Maybe you start micromanaging their work, gossiping about them, losing sleep. It's about looking at the whole domino effect that one thought can have on your well-being and your interactions.
So we're mapping out the cause and effect within ourselves. And the 4th question.
Question 4 often brings the most aha moments. Who would you be without the thought? Imagine the same situation, your colleague being late, but without that belief that they shouldn't be late or that they're always late. Close your eyes and picture it. What do you see? How do you feel in your body? How might your interactions be different without that thought clouding your perception?
It's like seeing the situation with fresh eyes. And then come the turnarounds, which sound pretty powerful.
Exactly. Turnarounds involve finding the opposite of what you originally wrote on the worksheet. The book explains there are usually 3 main ways to turn a statement around: to yourself, to the other person, and to the opposite. So, for my colleague is always late with their reports, it could become, I am always late with my responsibilities, I am always late with my reports to my colleague, and my colleague is never late with their reports.
Okay, I can see how that flips the script. But it's not just about saying the opposite, is it? We need to find real examples of how these turnarounds might be true.
You got it. The key is to find authentic examples for each turnaround that feel as true or even truer than the original statement. It's not about self-blame or trying to be positive for the sake of it. It's about honestly exploring other possibilities. For I am always late with my responsibilities. Maybe you realize you procrastinate on tasks or miss deadlines in other areas of your life. For I'm always late with my reports to my colleague. Maybe you haven't given them the information they need on time. And for my colleague is never late with their reports. Maybe you recall times they were on time or realize your perception of always is exaggerated. The amazing thing is that by flipping the perspective, we often see we might be doing the very thing we're criticizing in others.
Talk about self-awareness. It really helps us see the bigger picture. The book also mentioned that the turnaround for the sixth statement, I don't ever want to experience this again, is a bit different.
Yes, for that one, the turnarounds become, I am willing to, and I look forward to. Now, this might sound counterintuitive, especially if the experience was really negative. But the goal is to release that resistance to what's already happened or what might happen. By becoming willing or even looking forward, we take away some of the fear and emotional charge around it. It's about accepting the full spectrum of life and finding peace, even in the tough stuff.
Like taking the sting out of potential future pain by not resisting it so hard. The book also talks about deepening inquiry. How do we go beyond that initial application of the four questions and turnarounds?
Deepening inquiry means going further with each question. For example, if you answer yes to is it true, you might then ask, what's the reality of it? Like, my husband should understand me. The reality might be that in this moment, he doesn't. Whose business is it that he doesn't understand you? You might also ask, and it means that, to uncover hidden interpretations. Like, my boss criticized my work, and it means that I'm incompetent. You can then take that new statement, I'm incompetent, to inquiry. Another helpful question is, what do you think you would have if things were the way you think they should be? And as we discussed, identifying the should statements within your original judgment can also lead to deeper exploration. It's about peeling back the layers of assumptions and interpretations under that initial stressful thought.
Really getting to the root of it. But the
Yeah.
book also talks about living the work. What does that look like practically?
Living the work means putting those insights gained through inquiry into action in our daily lives. The book emphasizes that true self-realization shows up in real changes in our behavior and interactions. Often, it involves living the turnarounds we've discovered and making amends for past harm. But it's not about seeking forgiveness from others, it's about clearing our own conscience and finding inner peace. There's a story in the book about a former addict making amends for past thefts, and it beautifully illustrates how powerful it can be to take action based on the insights from the work. Similarly, the story of Byron Katie's son returning a shirt he'd taken shows the unexpected positive outcomes that can happen when we align our actions with our new understanding. The work isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's about embodying these insights through what we do. That's where real transformation happens.
It's about taking responsibility and aligning our actions with the clarity we've gained. The book also mentions a technique for turning around bigger, more abstract issues, like being frustrated with the system or an institution.
Yeah, for those broader issues, shifting the focus to our own thinking can be really helpful. So something like, the government is corrupt, might become, my thinking is corrupt.
Right.
It brings the issue back to where we have the power to investigate and potentially change within our own minds.
A way to reclaim some agency in those overwhelming situations. Now, the work isn't just for our judgments of others, is it?
Not at all. It can be equally helpful for dealing with our self-criticism. Same four questions, same turnarounds, but this time the focus is on I. So take a self-judgment like, I'm not good enough, and question it. Is it true? Can I absolutely know it's true? How do I react when I believe that thought? Who would I be without it? Then turn it around to statements like, I am good enough or I am not good enough in this specific instance, and try to find evidence for those alternative perspectives in your own life.
Extending that compassion and rigorous inquiry to our own inner dialogue. The book also talks about uncovering underlying beliefs, those deep-seated assumptions that are often hidden beneath our specific judgments. How do we bring those to light?
Underneath those specific judgments are often broader, more generalized beliefs that we've held for a long time, shaping our reality without us even realizing it. The proof of truth exercise is a great way to uncover them. You take a statement like, I'm angry at my friend for not calling me back, and list all the reasons why you think it's true. As you write, deeper assumptions often surface, like, friends should always be available, or if someone cares about me, they'll contact me promptly. Turning around these fundamental beliefs can be really freeing because they often drive so many of our stressful thoughts. The book even gives the example of turning around my life should be easy. to my life should not be easy, which can be surprisingly empowering. It's about getting to the roots of our belief system and examining those core assumptions that drive our thoughts and feelings.
Like we're excavating the foundations of our minds. I also noticed the book briefly mentions the importance of saying, I don't know during inquiry.
Absolutely. I don't know, it can be a really honest and liberating place to be during inquiry. When we face a question we genuinely can't answer definitively, admitting I don't know releases the pressure to have all the answers. It can bring a sense of peace and clarity right now.
Now, shifting gears a bit, the book also explores applying the work to our relationship with our bodies and with addictions.
The key understanding here is that our bodies themselves aren't the problem, it's our thoughts about them. The book suggests that bodies don't think or have issues with themselves, they just function according to their own natural intelligence. An addiction isn't seen as a dependence on a substance or behavior, but as an attachment to an uninvestigated thought or concept that comes up in the moment. Byron Katie's experience with smoking is a great example. After her awakening, the habitual urge to smoke simply disappeared. Years later, she was able to have a cigarette without any compulsion or judgment, realizing that the freedom came from the absence of those underlying stressful thoughts about smoking. The book emphasizes bringing inquiry to the thought before the urge arises.
So it's about addressing the mental and emotional roots, not just managing the outward symptoms. The work also has a unique take on forgiveness.
In the work, forgiveness isn't about condoning harmful actions or saying it was okay. It's about realizing that what you thought happened might not have happened in the way you perceived it, or it doesn't have the meaning you assigned to it. The book uses the analogy of stubbing your toe on the bed. You might feel that flash of anger, but you don't blame the bed or hold a grudge because you know it's just an object. It's about taking responsibility for our interpretations. There's also an exercise in the book where you revisit a time you did something you regret, and you try to understand that, given your beliefs at that time, you probably couldn't have acted differently. This leads to self-forgiveness and a deeper understanding of others' innocence. A core insight is this: no one can hurt me, that's my job. It's our beliefs about others' actions that cause us suffering.
Forgiveness is a shift in understanding that's powerful. The book also talks about fear and facing the worst that can happen.
When it comes to fear, the work encourages us to really question those thoughts fueling it. The fear of death, for example, leads to the question, can you absolutely know that it's true that you know how to die? The dialogue about 9/11 really shows how fear often comes not from the present reality, but from thoughts about what might happen in the future, from being in our loved one's business, worrying about their safety. The turnaround, I can kill myself on the subway, shows how challenging those deep fears can disrupt their hold on us. The conversation with Willem about his experience with bombings as a child is another powerful example. It shows how the story we tell ourselves about fear can cause way more suffering than the actual event. The turnarounds, I'm willing for the bombs to be falling on my head again, and I look forward to the bombs falling again, represent a path to freedom from that past trauma. It's about meeting our fears head on with honesty and inquiry.
Instead of trying to avoid them, the book also touches on anger and loss, using the example of someone being angry as Sam for dying.
It's a powerful illustration of the stress we create when we argue with reality, in this case, the reality of death. The turnaround, I should stick around, shows how the mourner might be mentally reliving the loss, maybe preventing themselves from fully engaging with life now. It highlights how accepting what is, even when it's painful, can bring more peace than resisting it.
It's about allowing ourselves to grieve without getting stuck in that mental battle. And finally, the book repeatedly emphasizes the importance of honesty in doing the work.
Honesty with ourselves and others is essential for inquiry. The dialogue about lying shows how questioning a thought like, people shouldn't lie, and turning it around can reveal deeper truths about ourselves and how we see others. It highlights that sometimes what we perceive as dishonesty in someone else might actually be our own projections. And it shows that true honesty might involve being willing to change our minds as we gain new insights. The whole process relies on a deep commitment to truthfulness in examining our thoughts.
So the effectiveness of the work depends on our willingness to be completely honest.
You got it.
Well, this deep dive into loving what is and the work has been eye-opening. The key takeaway is that our suffering comes not from reality itself, but from our unexamined thoughts about reality.
And the work offers a simple but powerful way to examine those thoughts, using the 4 questions and turnarounds, and ultimately find that inner peace.
If this resonates with you, our listener, if you're experiencing stress or inner conflict, we encourage you to take one stressful thought that keeps popping up and put it through those 4 questions. For a deeper dive, Download the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet from thework.com. It's a great starting point for untangling those mental knots.
And to leave you with something to ponder, consider that question from the book's title, Loving What Is. Could it be that by stopping those arguments with reality, by letting go of the shoulds and the resistance, we might find a deeper level of acceptance and even joy in this present moment?
As Byron Katie invites us to do, consider choosing freedom from those stressful thoughts rather than holding on to the need to be right.